here with your 1000th neuro nugget of the day. It is Friday. I know this is not typical for me to come up here on a Friday, but there's something I need to get off my chest. I need to get it off my heart. I need to unload it onto you guys. So we're going to be talking about Ann Taylor. Did she royally manipulate Mr. Kohberger into this guilty plea deal? And please let me know if you guys are in here. If you're in the chat, let me know if it's working on your end. I know we had some technical issues earlier. I don't know what's going on, by the way. Um, I'll give it a couple of seconds. Make sure that everything is pulling up here. I see there's 2 of you in here. Give it a like. And please leave a comment in the chat so I know that it's working. Did Ann Taylor royally manipulate Brian Kohberger? Fun fact before we get started. Lawyers, it's one of the professions that tends to have some of the highest rates of psychopathic people. It's working. I hope it's working. I hope it remains working. I deleted the other upload because it was just being super weird, super sus. So let's talk about everything I had already said in the previous upload, right? Is it possible that Ann Taylor was pulling the strings from behind the scenes? Somebody who was supposed to protect him, right? Tonight, get ready. This is an atypical Friday. I normally do not upload, do not do lives on Friday. So make sure you say hi. Happy weekend, happy early weekend. We're going to be diving into the possibility. Was Brian Kohberger manipulated by his own attorney? Was he royally fudged by Ann Taylor into pleading guilty? Because we know when a nation is watching, when a courtroom becomes a stage, and in that courtroom, who do we have sitting, smiling like the Cheshire Cat? Ann Taylor, right? And we know Ann Taylor was not just any public defender. Hello, everyone in the chat. She was the chief of the Kootenai County Public Defender's Office, okay? She's a legal powerhouse. She knows what she's doing. She is well-trained. She's an Idaho girl. She is a sorority girl. I said this 2.5 years ago. Please, if you do not believe me, go rewatch all my old videos. I delved deep into this woman. And in the months following her being appointed to this case, weird decisions began to surface, right? What did we see? We see delayed motions. We saw witnesses being avoided. And then we saw and heard rumors of this potential plea deal. So this is where it got very strange. We see Kohberger, who throughout 2.5 years has completely maintained his innocence. And then suddenly he begins to be very compliant, silent, he starts cooperating. And a lot of sources close to the case whispered of psychological pressure, isolation tactics. Again, Brian Kohberger was a man who was in isolation for 2.5 years. And if you know anything about isolation tactics, can royally fudge somebody mentally, right? We have seen the Richard Allen case. And does this scream of manipulation, right? Could Ann Taylor have possibly quietly nudged Kohberger toward a guilty plea? Not in his best interest, but in the interest of somebody else? Is that a possibility? Now, we're going to begin again with the first red flag, right? Because before representing Kohberger, and again, this was mentioned in my 2.5-year-old videos, I will try to pin them in the description for you guys. Ann Taylor had represented the family of one of the murder victims. That's right. She had an actual professional relationship with somebody directly tied to the case. And this was who? Xana Kernodle's mom, right? But instead of recusing herself, which she should have done, and she did not, she decided to stay. Why did she decide to stay? So some people have mentioned that she was the only one that was qualified in the entire state of Idaho. Now, others believe that she was put there deliberately, right? A lot of people believe that there's a conflict of interest that was buried under a lot of politics and bureaucratic paperwork. But If you believe the conspiracy, then this was never about defense. It was about control. It was about controlling the outcome. It was about controlling Brian Kohberger. It was about getting somebody behind bars. Again, this is my opinion, one of my many thousand theories and conspiracies. So please remember to remain respectful in the chat and in the comment section, even if you agree or disagree, right? Now, we've all seen it before. Sometimes it's very subtle. But what do lawyers sometimes do, right? They reassure their client, they gain their trust, and then they make these very soft suggestions that come across as being pure, right? What do they say? This is your best shot. It's your best shot. You know, no jury's gonna believe you. You should do this because this is better for you, right? And again, statistically speaking, lawyers and surgeons and law enforcement, they have the most psychopaths. Just figured I'd throw that out there. Now, a very good lawyer understands psychology, and a very good lawyer can convince any client to say anything or almost anything, especially when that client is isolated, desperate, and under national scrutiny. And we know that Mr. Kohberger was isolated for 2.5 years. We have seen him be desperate. A lot of people say that he seems cool, calm, and collected, but I actually notice the opposite. There are instances where Mr. Kohberger looks like a scared toddler. He has fear in his eyes and he seems stressed, right? And we know that he also has a diagnosis of anxiety and autism spectrum disorders. So add all of that with desperation, national scrutiny, and isolation, it's probably not a very good combination. So now the question becomes, who actually benefits from a guilty plea? The state? Yes, of course. Closure for the families? Absolutely. But what about Ann Taylor? Is it possible that Ann Taylor was pressured by higher-ups to push Kohberger toward confession? Was she protecting her own connections? Again, this is a small town. Small towns have very tight connections, but top that off with being somebody who attended the same university as a lot of these powerful politicians and these lawyers and was a sorority girl herself. You know, was she protecting her own connections? Hello, everyone. Hello from the UK. Or did she see this case as, you know, it's just too dangerous to take to trial? What I do notice when Mr. Kohberger was taking the plea deal is that she's smiling a lot. And we'll get to that because Anne, throughout the entire plea deal hearing, is smiling the whole time. Sometimes at Kohberger, sometimes just smiling, sometimes smiling at the camera. But when I look at Alyssa Massoff and when I look at Bika Barlow, I see the complete opposite. These two other women look freaking pissed. They look angry, and we're gonna get to that, right? So here's another theory, right? A sealed deal, like what you'll never really hear about in court. In this version, Mr. Kohberger agrees to plead guilty quietly. No trial, no witnesses, no questions, in exchange for what? A potential life sentence instead of the death penalty. But here's the twist. What if Kohberger didn't fully understand the deal he was walking into? Big Plants, Little City. She once said Brian is innocent. She actually said that multiple times. And Alyssa Massoff said that multiple times, right? And she was not wrong because per the law, he is innocent until proven guilty, until the trial is over, until the case is over, until he chooses to accept a plea deal, right? Now, there are several body language experts that have analyzed his behavior, and they're very mixed. Like I mentioned earlier, some have said that he looks medicated. Others say that he appears to have dissociated. Is it possible that Ann Taylor could have slowly worn him down day after day until he stopped resisting against somebody who is in social isolation for 2.5 years and has minimal contact with the outside world? Yes, he was probably communicating here and there with his family, but probably most of his communications were taking place with Ann Taylor, right? So Was it legal gaslighting? And now we ask, is this justice or is this something darker? Sorry, I'm getting my water here. It's almost gone. Is Bryan Kohberger a monster or a manipulated pawn in a legal game far bigger than any of us have imagined? Yes, Ufi, we are all asking the same questions. Now, I believe the truth at some point will come out. I pray that it's not when we are all 95 years old, but we also have to come to the realization that we just may never know the full truth. But one thing is certain, and it's that the courtroom is not always a place for justice, unfortunately. Sometimes it is a stage. And sometimes the people we trust to protect us have their own secrets. So if you guys want to stay tuned to hear part 2 of this theory, where we explore the FBI's alleged involvement and Ann Taylor's rumored federal ties, hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button. And let us know in the comments if you think that Bryan Kohberger was manipulated into pleading guilty. Please leave a 1. And if you think this is a stupid theory, please leave a 2. Now I'm going to pull up the chat before I head on out. And guys, I thought I was done for the day, but again, there's so much that, like, this case is not really over. You guys understand that, right? Like I said, we still have to wait for the gag order. We have to be ungagged. And we're going to get to the autism, because that makes a huge difference in how people handle peer pressure. And because we mentioned Kohberger potentially being pressured, of course it's a theory by his lawyer, is she one of the good old boys? Small town, sorority girl, worked in some of the cases involving the parents of the victims. Autism is massive. I wish that they would teach more psychology in school, like in high school, for example, even in middle school, just a basic psychology course about specific diagnoses like autism, like ADD, because the majority of people do not understand how these diagnoses can actually alter how, for example, Kohberger could be manipulated, right? And a lot of people feel that Ann Taylor gave up at the end when the judge would not allow stuff, right? It can also have been Ann Taylor being worn down. Like, you're trying to do maybe a very good job for your client. You're trying to submit criminal evidence that was found at the crime scene. You're trying to submit DNA, and you just realize it hits you like a bag of bricks that this judge isn't going to allow any more evidence into this case. Like, you know, did that make Ann Taylor just feel like it was done? You know, not allowing possible other suspects to me looks very biased, right? But a lot of people also believe that if Ann Taylor actually did anything, she definitely screwed herself over, like, badly, because again, with the smiling, with the grinning, it could be perceived in a variety of ways, right? A lot of people after that believe that her credibility is null and void, right? Because when we see Ann Taylor going from insisting first that Kohberger is innocent to then grinning when he pleaded guilty. Again, that smile, that constant grinning, was she grinning because she's happy that he didn't get the death penalty, or is she grinning because she got what she wanted? Is she working for the good old boys club in Idaho? A lot of people have suspected this for a very long time, that maybe there is some collusion going on. Does she know Bill Thompson outside? Does she know the judge outside of the courtroom? What is very concerning to me is that we all heard Bill Thompson make the statement regarding Brian Kohberger, right? He mentioned that Brian was not at the crime scene. He literally said those words at the plea deal hearing. This alone should get the plea thrown out. Okay, that's like the best exculpatory evidence. You literally just said you can't put him at 1122 King Road. You know, do you guys think that grinning that Ann Taylor's always doing, is that a smile trying to soothe Mr. Kohberger? I've personally never seen attorneys like smile that much in court. Or is it a smirk? But again, always ask yourself, you know, how did Kohberger did this to 4 people in 4 to 8 minutes? He's got nothing in his car, nothing in his apartment. Is this about big money, big criminals? Or maybe he could have been involved, but this was not a one-man crime. Even if Kohberger is guilty, something seems wrong with this case, right? It's very hard to believe because, again, when people say that they see somebody with no emotional whatever, I see a very confused, almost betrayed Brian, right? And it wouldn't be the first time lawyers have done this. Like, time will tell. And yes, we have all heard Ann Taylor and Alyssa proclaim Brian's innocence more than once. I'm so confused, right? I mean, Alyssa said we are firmly, and I mean firmly convinced. So what is going on? Right? And let's talk about the autism, right? Because we understand that Brian was in isolation for 2.5 years, only interacting with probably a prison guard, probably Ann Taylor, and probably sometimes his family, right? Anything that you say or write or mention in even the telephone calls when you are incarcerated can and will be used against you. And then top that off with autism spectrum disorder. Like, it's very possible that Kohberger would have done anything that she suggested, right? There are some people who are on the spectrum and they have such a powerful desire to please people, to conform, because people who are on the spectrum are often kind of pushed to the outskirts of society, right? So a lot of people with autism are just trying to really fit in. A lot of people with autism have very few friends. They're usually not welcomed in their communities. They usually have difficulty fitting into social settings. This can cause people on the spectrum, neurodivergent people, to be more likely to comply with requests, right? Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's confusing, even if it means a false confession. Something Wong says hysteria is autism. Yeah, I caught that within like the first couple weeks, and I actually got shit for it, but I was right. You can't diagnose somebody by just looking at them, Nika. Well, I did, and I got it right. But again, you can't always do that. But I've been working, and I have a background in psychology for a very long time, so it kind of helps, right? So let me know, was this her plan all along? And was this her plan for other defendants she supposedly defends? Because we have heard that Ann Taylor is a plea deal queen, right? Believe the majority of cases that Ann Taylor has taken, it's pleas instead of going to trial, which is actually quite common for defense attorneys, right? Nobody really wants to spend their time in trial. You want to save that time, you want to save that money. And again, at the end of the day, Ann Taylor does work for the state. So yeah, most attorneys are going to want plea deals, right? Our system kind of depends on these. But I don't know. Very possible she could be part of the Good Old Boy Network. We always had wondered about her here in this channel. Is that why the other two attorneys looked so angry? Is that why Alyssa and Becca Barlow looked so angry? Now, I know that Brian Kohberger, I'm sure for personal reasons and for probably resources, it's different. Anytime you can afford like your own private paid attorney, it's going to be different than if you get a state appointed attorney, right? Paid attorneys have a completely different approach to the tactics they use in court for defense purposes, right? The people that pay Ann Taylor are the same people that pay Bill Thompson, right? At the end of the day, they all report to the same people, right? So does it actually make a difference to her if he's found guilty or acquitted? Probably not, because, I mean, yes, it's her job. I'm sure she's good at it. I'm sure she's whatever. But it's never going to be the same as having your own personal paid lawyer, right? It's very possible that in the early days, she had his back, and then she probably gave up. She said, this is, we're going to lose this, so whatever, right? Do you guys think that Ann Taylor just completely failed Brian? To me, in that hearing, Mr. Kohberger looked extremely lost, confused. And Ann Taylor's grinning the whole time. WTF, bro? And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, I have put it up on several of my thumbnails, but Ann Taylor's like touching Brian. Did you guys catch that? Like, she's like, well, not like making that stupid face, but she's like, she has her like her hand on his arm, like almost like, you got this. Just go plead. Go be a good old guilty boy. Do it for mommy. It was weird. It gave me the ick. It gave me the ick. And this was my instinct, my initial instinct. If you don't believe me, you can go watch the old videos that I uploaded 2.5 years ago regarding Ann Taylor. My initial instinct regarding Ann Taylor was not good. But we decided here to give her the benefit of the doubt, right? But maybe, just maybe, Ann she doesn't have that in her, you know? That fight of like a paid lawyer would have to try to defend her client, right? And I kept crossing my fingers, hoping that I was wrong. But now, maybe we were wrong about Ann Taylor. Maybe we were wrong. I feel there is a very important reason why Becca Barlow and Alyssa Masseth were pissed. They look pissed. You know, and Taylor, at the end of the day, she's the local. She went to University of Idaho. You know, and all that we have really heard Ann Taylor argue is, oh, I can't get through the mountain of evidence. There's just so much evidence. There's just so much, right? And when Brian Kohberger is answering to the charges, it almost feels like so rehearsed, like he's taking a freaking exam, right? Like he's like reciting these answers that he studied for. Like I hate the feeling. It doesn't sit well with me. And just to clarify, because somebody always manages to misconstrue my words, right? There are a lot of us here that are neurodivergent that are on the spectrum or have ADD or maybe both. A lot of people assume that people with autism don't have emotions. I assure you, people with autism are robotic, but have emotions, right? All of them, right? I've worked with a lot of kids on the spectrum. They all feel very deeply, although you may not be able to see it. You know, they come across as robotic or very, I forget the word. Almost snobby. Some people have mentioned snobby is the word, but it's because they're so proper with words, right? In fact, some people on the spectrum experience their emotions internally. Externally, you can't even tell what's going on. But internally, these emotions can be massively debilitating, right? They feel them, they just can't outwardly express them so much. So just because somebody doesn't act like you would assume a normal person would show those emotions doesn't mean that they're not feeling anything. Now, I'm not saying Kohberger has emotions or doesn't have emotions. I don't know what's going on in there. I'm not a mind reader. He could be cold and calculating and whatever else, right? But what I see is actually he appears to be overwhelmed, in my opinion, right? And people have a problem with that, again, because a lot of people don't understand that you can be innocent and plead guilty and appear calm. How can he appear so calm if he didn't do it? He's been confident since day one. He's been so confident. Maybe he's confident because he didn't do it. Again, this is a man who went to the doctor like the day after the crime took place, right? He had a doctor's appointment. He didn't have any injuries on him, no broken bones, no wounds, no bruises, not a single freaking scratch. You know, people who commit these types of crimes get injuries. They get cuts at least, a bruise at least. People who are utilizing knives most often end up getting knifed themselves, at least something small, right? And top that off, 4 victims, that'd be a wet, soggy mess, okay? A wet, soggy mess, making it even more risky. And then to top it off, we have a man here who has been diagnosed with dexterity issues, with coordination disorders, right? So, and remember, when they checked his car, they didn't find anything. They didn't even find proof that he had actually cleaned his car. Does anybody feel played by Ann Taylor? Does anybody feel duped by Ann Taylor? Do you think Kohberger feels duped by Ann Taylor? Do you think he's even realized it yet? Because if you're being severely manipulated for 2.5 years, This is like the person that you're pretty much the only person that you're talking to outside of maybe a prison guard and maybe your family every now and then. Maybe he is so convinced that this was a good idea. And if that's the case, it's going to be a very large wake-up call for Mr. Kohberger. And if you guys think that this is a very far-fetched, remember the case of, what was the case in Indiana? Let's see, not Indiana, I'm sorry, Wisconsin. What was the case in Wisconsin where they actually incarcerated a mentally retarded underage boy? Do you guys remember? He's still there, by the way. He was a boy underage. Let me see if I can find him. Are you guys okay in the chat? Let's see what the chat is doing. It's getting dark here. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm going to let you guys go before the internet does something crazy again. But ask yourselves, why was Anne smiling? It's all a little bit suspicious. Sitting all that time in jail just to plea. Did she sell him out? Did he confess to her? Does this deal just make life easier for everybody, for all of the attorneys and Taylor included? What about the time she said Brian was innocent, right? You guys take care. Have a wonderful night. Leave a like, leave a comment of Ann Taylor. Did she royally manipulate Kohberger? Please leave a 1. See you guys soon. Take care.